Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we discuss all things within the gaming industry. And today we have a bit of a spicy one. I hope that we get through it relatively quickly, but we will see how this goes. Today we are going to talk a bit about Twitch. Once again, we're going to talk about Crystal Dynamics and an interesting development recently. And then we are going to cover a follow-up to the story we covered a couple weeks back about PQube. So, with all of that said, let us get started with our first topic. And that first topic, of course, is Twitch. So, many of you may have seen the news circulating around that Twitch is getting rid of hosting mode. And hosting mode was a way that you could support your favorite streamers without necessarily sending all of your community over to the stream. So if you were offline, you could host people, and that way, if people went to your channel, they may have discovered new people through hosting, through the auto hosting feature, and therefore maybe support other people that you enjoy watching. Now, in some ways that was a good thing, but it was not necessarily a regularly used feature. And it has caused a little bit of a backlash, but we'll get into that after. Basically, the host mode is going away on October 3rd, and after that date, the host command and the host channel stream manager action will no longer be available. In addition, the auto host mode will now change to suggested channels in your channel settings instead of automatically hosting those people. So what will happen is at the bottom of the screen, you will have Jagtress recommends these streamers for you to watch, and there is a list of people who I've included that if they are live at the time that you go to my channel, you will see their logo and you will see underneath the fact that they are live on Twitch. And you can click on it, it will take you to the channel, and that way you can actively go there. Now, of course, this was met with a bit of backlash because people didn't understand why hosting mode was going away. Because for some people it was very useful, and for a lot of other people, a lot of people have really reverted mostly to rating as opposed to hosting people now. So what Twitch has said in this help document is we've made the decision to depreciate this feature because the experience it delivers to viewers doesn't match their expectations when they come to Twitch, which sounds like a lot of horseshit, but moving on. Viewers want to interact with a streamer when they're live, and host mode blocks this from happening. Basically, if you host a streamer, it doesn't take the community over to the stream like a raid does. You stay in the channel of the person whose stream you are in, and if they're hosting, it almost acts a little bit like a front page. If you go to the front page of Twitch, there is a carousel that you will see people who are live that they are featuring, that you have to apply to be on front page, by the way. And if you're watching just off of the front page, you don't see the chat. You don't really get a way to interact with the streamer, but if you are on the front page, technically you count in the metrics. Now, if you are not actively in the stream, but you're watching a hosted stream, sometimes that would actually count as a viewer, but then it would get confusing in terms of metrics of how many viewers do you actually have in the channel versus how many do you have from other streaming sites. And there are a lot of different other streaming sites that you could watch streams, but I feel like part of the reason that they're depreciating this is not because they particularly care about your specific community. I actually more feel like this is another way to combat bots. We have all heard about the other websites that will feature certain streamers in order to make them targets, and not necessarily targets for good things either. And sometimes that leads to hate raids or malicious statements made in Twitch chat, a coordinated effort, doxing sort of situation. There's a number of different reasons that may bring hostile people to a stream inadvertently, and Twitch is actively trying to find different ways to combat the botting issue without necessarily infringing upon other aspects of Twitch and community. So I feel like some of this is well meaned, but I don't know that this will really help in practice. I never saw that much value in hosting. Occasionally I would run across something that I would be interested in, but otherwise it wasn't that huge of a deal. If you're looking to support streamers, definitely raid them, give them shout outs, suggest the channel when you're offline, and people who are in your stream or on your page will see the people that you recommend. Mention it on Twitter. There's a whole host of other ways. You could have a channel dedicated in your Discord server to boost people, but otherwise I don't feel like it's a huge loss necessarily to get rid of the hosting mode. I feel like this is another way that Twitch is trying to protect people from malicious sites that are using the hosting feature in ways that are not really good. But that's not all we have to talk about with Twitch. I want to cover another story, and I was a bit hesitant to cover this particular story due to the nature of it. Just, it calls into a lot of questions about many things, and like I said, Twitch likes to take a couple of steps forward and a bunch of steps backwards. So what I'm talking about here is a particular streamer went live on a particular day, was reported by a lot of people, and they incurred a ban. Now, at first it seemed like it would be a permanent ban because of what happened, but that was not the case. This is the article, or one of the articles in question, about a streamer who went live and was having sex on stream. Now, I'm not going to necessarily discuss whether or not it's a good idea. What I will discuss, however, is the importance of moderation and the terms of service when it comes to Twitch. While I criticize Twitch for a great deal of things, there are some things that are good. Unfortunately, the fact that while they banned this person, the fact that this person only received a 7-day ban for their actions has made a lot of people very upset with Twitch. Now, if this was a first offense, then I do feel like there should be some kind of punishment, but it should have been longer than a week. Because really all this has done is perhaps brought more light and more viewers to this particular streamer because of their actions. Because people are people and do interesting and questionable things. And I'm not going to mention who the streamer is, but what I do want to talk about is that they very much did violate the terms of service. Now, if you've never seen this, you haven't spent a lot of time on Twitch before, and you really should go look it up if you are on Twitch in any capacity. This is the terms of service. On the surface, it doesn't look like it is huge, because this is the general information about any content that you put on Twitch can be reused for some of their promotional videos or whatever it happens to be. The legal ramifications if something is wrong with Twitch and you are thinking about taking them to court for whatever reason. But on the side, there's a whole number of different subsections that you can click on, like the DMCA guidelines. Now, one of these things is the community guidelines, and this is the thing that I want to draw attention to based on that particular article and that particular streamer. There are rules about sexual content, nudity, and pornography on Twitch. And this is the thing that people are really upset about, that it states nudity and sexually explicit content or other activities such as pornography, sexual acts or intercourse, and sexual services are prohibited, meaning do not do. Content or activities that threaten or promote sexual violence or exploitation are strictly prohibited and may be reported to law enforcement. It goes into child exploitation, and then it talks about sexually suggestive content or activities are also prohibited, although they may be allowed in educational context or for pre-approved licensed content, in each case subject to additional restrictions. And then there's more information about their specific policies if you're doing anything like body painting, if you're doing different types of dance that can sometimes come into question whether it is all right to be streamed on Twitch, but this is what it brings you to if you are looking at, well, what specifically, and this was relatively recently updated to be more specific on what is allowable and not allowable in any type of context, including explicit content, suggestive content, attire, sexual content in video games and media, other restrictions if you're doing IRL streams, what happens if you come across someone who is nude, what do you do in that particular circumstance, etc. And this is important to follow because, like it says, you can be reported to law enforcement for some of these things. It's not because Twitch is trying to ruin fun, but based on the article, there is also alcohol involved. There was also mention of the fact that it was accidental, that the person went live while engaging in intercourse with their partner or friend or whomever. But the fact that it has become widely publicized, I really feel like Twitch should pay attention to its own policies. And if it goes to the extreme by allowing this person to only have a 7-day ban, you've technically kicked open the door that other people are also going to try and push the limits, and you're going to turn Twitch into another type of site that we are not going to mention here. And that's not necessarily a good thing. And I personally believe if that's the way that you want to go, if you're looking for another avenue to make money, have a separate website for that kind of thing that has better protections, that has age restrictions, that follows laws, etc., to make sure that people are protected. Do not have it on Twitch, because Twitch, as it currently stands, you have to be 13 to be able to use the platform, or 15, I forget which, but still, you do not want to allow that kind of content to be on your platform if you have people who are minors using your website, like esports teams and people who are part of those esports teams. So I just want to make people aware that there are terms of service here, and this is one of the reasons why, when the hot tub meta was a huge thing, there were a lot of people who do moderation on Twitch like I do, where these things need to be paid attention to. Regardless of if you personally think it's okay, there are rules that are clearly stated where you can receive a ban for your actions if you fall under those things. So, I'm curious what you think. If you've seen any of the videos or anything like that, do not put the person's name in the comments anywhere. If I do see that, I will delete them. Just saying, I do not want to give this person more publicity. If it was an accident, fine, but I don't believe that 7 days was enough time for them to learn that this was not acceptable on Twitch, that this was violating terms of service. But that's just my thoughts. I'm curious to hear yours, and we're going to move on to the next topic. Next up, I want to talk about Crystal Dynamics. Now, if you're familiar, Crystal Dynamics owns a couple of IPs that were recently part of the Square Enix umbrella, and due to the massive deal recently where Square decided to sell off a bunch of IPs to Embracer Group, we didn't know the status of some of those IPs. Well, now we have some more information. As reported by Games Industry Biz, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal reclaim IPs such as Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and Legacy of Kain. Also in here, I believe, is Thief, which I'm also really excited about. So, in this article, Tomb Raider is now back in the hands of Crystal Dynamics, which made several games in the series between 2004 and 2016. The studio is now also in control of the Legacy of Kain series. So they stated in a blog post that they are now the owners of these games and controller of the gameplay and personal data related to them. Eidos Montreal also announced that it reclaimed games it developed like Deus Ex and the Thief games, and now controls data obtained from gameplay of those titles. So in a recent interview with Game Industry Biz, Embracer CEO Lars Wingford acknowledged the importance of the very traditional IPs the company has acquired. We will take good care of the people, the IPs, and if we set reasonable expectations, I think we will also be happy with the financial performance on this, he said. Now, this is exciting because now that they've got their IPs back or allowed to do stuff with their IPs, I'm hoping that that means we will get more games in these IPs with Thief, because I do really love the Thief games, and Tomb Raider, because I do really love the Tomb Raider games, and I do like what they originally did with the reboot of Tomb Raider from the 2016 version. So I'm curious how you feel about the fact that there is potential here that maybe we will see some more in these series. So let me know how you feel about this, if you're excited like I am. And we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic is, of course, PQube, and it is a follow-up from a couple weeks back when we covered an indie dev, Toj. They had a massive issue with PQube, and we were faced with this tweet and the official announcement that the Space for the Unbound was delaying its release until further notice because PQube was not providing the assistance or the payment that they were supposed to. They had applied for a diversity fund that was supposed to give them recognition for being an underrepresented game developer, and PQube was going to support them, but they held some of those funds, etc., so on and so forth. If you want more information, check out a couple weeks ago when we talked about this initially. But there's been more news since then. Apparently, Toj Productions is not the only company to shoot at PQube in terms of statements and criticism. And what I mean by that is we came across this tweet, which is from Carousel Official, and these are the people who made the Eterno Blade games. And they stated, "It has been tough for us for the past 3 years. We have struggled to recover since we signed a publishing deal with PQube, but now it's time we came out with the truth. Hopefully this will help other indie game developers to avoid what has happened to us and inform our fans about the situation." PQube has published Eterno Blade 2 on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One in Europe since October of 2019 under a publishing agreement with us and agreed to pay a minimum guarantee. However, PQube only paid a small part of the minimum guarantee of the signing milestone by the time we sent them the game, and they never paid the remaining milestones. We have been trying to resolve this issue with PQube, but were unable to reach a solution, leading us to terminate the publishing agreement around September 2020. However, PQube has refused to return the publishing control on the console platforms back to us and continues to sell and take all revenues from Eterno Blade 2. This is terrible, but it spirals from here. They called out PQube, much like Toge Productions called out PQube, and PQube has once again decided they were going to say some things about this. So, they have responded to the allegations as of September 2nd about the Eterno Blade situation and said, in a statement provided to IGN, which is listed below, PQube appears to say that it didn't pay an agreed minimum guarantee to the developer because Carousel self-released a PC version of the game. It also says it sent numerous proposals and supporting agreements to give rights for the game back to Carousel, but claims it wasn't acknowledged by the developer. So this is the full statement. I am not going to read the full statement, just a couple of points from it. But it states, "At our post-launch meeting in January 2020, Carousel acknowledged significant product quality issues and agreed to provide critical fixes in order to make the game commercially viable. Unfortunately, these fixes never materialized, and Carousel remained unresponsive. PQube remained prepared to pay the full guarantee for the game, despite the very poor reviews and sales, and to publish the PC version in line with PQube's option in the agreement. Carousel agreed in March 2020 to provide the PC version to PQube, but then proceeded to list and then release the PC version itself without further discussion with PQube." I already don't like this statement because, one, again, you're placing blame. Two, you're talking about the sales. You're the publisher. While you're not wholly responsible for the success or detriment to a game, you do have some stake in it. You're the publisher. I imagine that you have ways and teams of people that are willing to help if it's established in the contract. I don't know if that's wholly true, but I imagine that if you're supporting these indie developers, that you want to make a profit, and so it would make sense that you would go ahead and also promote the products. But maybe that's just me. Anyways, you're then also going to talk about the poor reviews and the poor sales of the game. Maybe have some more conversations and open up that dialogue. Right now, you're not feeling like there's been a lot of talk, and if it's falling on deaf ears, PQube, I'm really wondering, what are you doing and what is your team doing to not provide that feedback to the developers in order to allow a game to be successful? But anyways, they continue. Over the following 2 years, PQube proposed and set numerous proposals and supporting agreements to revert rights to Carousel in line with their request, but these were not acknowledged by Carousel, which doesn't make sense. Nevertheless, despite all of the challenges and the lack of communication from Coricel, PQube released its rights to the console versions back to Coricel well before the end of the agreement term. We remain open to support Carousel in any way possible. And again, I feel like this is kind of saving face. They, again, are under fire by a couple of different indie devs now. And while they may have the money to handle the situation, it doesn't look good for future relations with other indie devs and PQube as it stands. Now, to further the article, Coricel claims that it tried to resolve the situation with PQube amicably, but both parties could not reach a solution. The developers seemingly decided to terminate the publishing deal back in September of 2020. However, Coricel also claims that PQube refuses to relinquish publishing rights back for the Eterno Blade 2 on console and continues to sell it on multiple platforms, thus recouping all of the revenue from the game in Europe. That is really bad. So, of course, it refers to the tweet that we showed just a moment ago. But the final bit of information here is that the developer says it has also contacted Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft about taking Eterno Blade 2 off of digital stores in Europe, with only Nintendo and Sony complying. And I mean, I guess it helps a little bit because they're trying to keep afloat, but if they're not making money because PQube is continuing to make money off of the deal, but without giving Coricel the credit, that is not really a good situation to be in. And if this is yet another indie dev that has come forward talking about the publishing practices and bad contracts that PQube has with their clients, that is not a good thing. And I also feel like as an indie dev, and even if you're a AAA company, you really should be looking more closely at those contracts and make sure that these companies are going to follow through on the contracts that they make. And with an indie dev, it is very easy to sign a contract without knowing the full weight or ramifications of some of the terms that are agreed to in those. And it is very important to hire a legal professional to look over those contracts to make sure that you protect yourselves and your IPs. Because ultimately, if you're not going to make anything off of the game that you've spent a lot of money in, even if you've received that money through grants, then you're not doing yourself any favors, right? Now, I have one final article here, and that is from Game Industry Biz. Yet again, there is an update to this situation, and as of September 7th, Coricel has responded to PQube's comments with further allegations disputing the publisher's defense. Despite what PQube said in the statement, the fact remains unchanged that PQube has not yet paid us the agreed amount, the team wrote. We have not received any revenue from PQube sales in the EU stores. PQube did not return the publishing control in Europe back to us. There is consistency in the truth and confusion in the lies. The studio observed that PQube is still listed as the publisher for console versions, linking to the Xbox Store listing, and further alleged that PQube released a PC version without its permission. The PC version was never in the contract. The contract says PQube have only the first rights to refuse if we make another platform. In response to PQube's claims the developer did not address quality issues, Coricel claims always involved PQube in the process of QA. The team also says it flew to the UK in January 2020 to resolve matters with the publisher, but PQube reportedly only offered to pay 20% of the amount owed, another factor in Coricel's decision to terminate the contract. Now, this is just incredibly bad. It is certainly not looking good for PQube right now, as they have to deal with multiple allegations and see if the money is actually going to be paid to these indie developers, because right now it is not looking good for future business prospects if you're going to screw over your indie developers in this way. And if they do decide to band together and take PQube to court, this is going to blow up in a very awful and public way, and people may not do business with PQube as a result of this situation. So I don't know what's going to happen, if PQube is going to stick to their guns or if there is going to be legal action further, but I did say in the previous video to keep an eye on this situation because I knew there was going to be more, and I wasn't wrong. So I'm curious to see how you're feeling about this topic in particular, if you are on the side of the indie devs or if you think that PQube is in the right. If anybody has access to the contracts or anything like that, I would love to see it. But with all of that said, thank you so much for being part of the Patreon. I appreciate all of you being here, regardless of if you have information or opinions about Twitch, about Crystal Dynamics, or about PQube and its issues with a couple of their indie developers. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of them and all of them. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.